Good afternoon to you all. And as Madam has already pointed out, that counseling is a very, very important part and parcel of the people who are dealing with oncology patients. So, mainly I'll be talking, breaking bad news is being talked by somebody else, so I'll not touch much upon it. The second thing is counseling and the cancer patient at the time of diagnosis and completion of treatment, and how, why, and what should be done about all these things. So what is defining bad news? A bad news is a situation which either a feeling of no hope, a threat to a person's mental or physical well-being, an ability or of upsetting an established lifestyle, or a message is given which conveys an individual has a fewer choices in her or his or her life. Virtually every aspect of life of the patient and his family is disrupted. It results in loss of health and physical integrity, loss of friends and loved ones, inability to perform routine activities. The most important is the loss of finances, loss of self-esteem, and loss of religious convictions. Whenever anybody is diagnosed with any serious illness, especially like cancer, there are common reactions that occur in any individual, and that is but natural, it's nothing unnatural. What will happen? That the patient becomes very hostile, he becomes very angry, he may shout at the doctor that you are trying to give him a bad information, or there might be anxiety reactions that the patient becomes very anxious, non-communicative, or there can be people who think neither I used to drink nor I used to smoke. Why did this happen to me? What wrong have I done that this has happened to me? Or the patient may become a cocoon, or he may become very depressed. He doesn't express, doesn't talk to anybody. He may have a feeling of dependency that now on I will not be able to do my daily activities, I will not be able to go to office. So that kind of a feeling. Other is, patient may become hyperactive. Despite the diagnosis established, he says, no, who says I have got cancer? So denial in one way is good, but it's a bad thing in another form that sometimes the patient may take a long time before they come for treatment because they are in a denial phase. They think that they cannot get the disease, they may be healthy, they may be otherwise apparently doing fine, but once the disease has been diagnosed, they should start treatment. But if there is a denial phase, then there is a loss of time for treatment. And sometimes the patient may go into psychosis kind of a situation. So once a bad news or a diagnosis of cancer or any chronic disease is made, the patient may be lost, he may be confused, he may be unsure, and he can take any direction. You have multi-directions on this board which can say that the patient may be perplexed, bewildered, disoriented, and may be unclear. So lots of pressure is put upon once any bad news or a disease like cancer is communicated to the patient. Now, why should you counsel? Is it necessary to counsel a patient? And why should you know how to counsel? Because these things are very, very important. No, there can be people, various kinds of people. And counseling is a very, very specific subject. Not everybody says that I know how to counsel. It's not easy. Other person can be there, a doctor may say that, why, it's not my job, why should I counsel the patient? It is somebody else's job, let somebody else do it. Let the counselor do it. Or somebody else can do it. Why should I do? Somebody else can do it. Or I am too busy, why should I counsel the patient? I have lots of patients to see, I don't have time for counseling. And there can be family pressures when the patient relative will come that better not to tell the patient. If you tell the patient will collapse here only and die. but also by the words or the mannerism of a physician. So a manner, the words the physician says is very, very important to the patient. It is therefore a sacred duty to guard himself carefully in this respect and to avoid all things which may have a tendency to discourage the patient and depress his spirit. So we should counsel the patients and we should counsel them positively. Now, why there are complaints against doctors? And the complaints can be reduced by identifying and remedying poor communication skills at the earliest. There was a study conducted in Canada, and more than 3,400 physicians were examined between 1993 and 96. And these doctors were followed up for a period of 2 to 12 years. The result was those with poor communication skill had more complaints from the patient. So it was excess of 2.15 per 100 patients here. So if you do not communicate, the chances that the patient will go and report to the matron that the doctor is not behaving properly, or she'll go to the medical superintendent, or she'll go to the director that this doctor doesn't behave properly with me. So effective communication, what does it do? It increases in patient and physician satisfaction. The people are better adhering to the treatment plans. There is better medical situation, better medical decision, better health outcomes, and fewer malpractice suits. And if you take it in the Punjabi instance, you say balle balle for all of us, if you have win-win situation for everybody. And this is a busy jargon of Delhi. You can see any traffic signaling all over Delhi. So you can never be too busy to counsel. So I think to say a few kind words to anybody, you should never find yourself busy, because that can earn you a lot of things. Patients prefer to be told. Maybe they might to be told, may like to be told in a different way, but they always want to be cajoled, they want to be cared for. That's very, very important. Now, let us see what is the change in the attitude. In 1961, 90% of the doctors preferred not to tell the patients. During the next 20 years, what happened that 98% of the doctors preferred to tell the patient because they had a lot of complaints from the patient. So this is mainly because of due to improved diagnosis in most of the cancer. Patients prefer doctors as a source of information, and the communication gap still exists. Only 50% of the salient points are remembered, and only 13% of dying patients are told of diagnosis. Truth is usually not understood or not retained. Signs of emotional distress are often ignored, and that's just to the tune of about 70% in one survey. That could be deliberate. Suppose the patient starts crying, you don't cajole the patient, you don't console the patient, say that's not my job. And mostly, you should be detached and attached. You should have a policy of attachment as well as you should not get personally involved with the patient. So need for a professional detachment is very, very important. Especially in a specialty like oncology, you should have very, very strong mind support, because you may not be able to control the resultant emotion outpourings, and that's very bad for the patient. So, did not want to upset the patient, that should not be the approach, but we should take a very, very equipoise, neither bad nor good. So, you should have an equipoise position in telling the patient. So, this is just missed opportunity for interval empathy in lung cancer communication. This is a study where 20 patients, 9 doctors were examined, and there were 385 empathic opportunities. Doctor responded only 10% time. So 90% time the doctor did not respond. It's a very unfortunate situation. In the prior studies, let us see who are responding in better time. Primary care physician responded 21% time, oncologist 22% time, and the surgeons were the best because they responded 38% of the time. So communication is very, very important, and we should not have a communication gap. If that gap is there, it should be bridged. It should not be that the Murga is walking 1 mile away and the other people are following 1 kilometer away. So the communication gap should be bridged. Now, how and who should do it? Truth telling is a process, not a single event. And patients should be told about the possibility of cancer as one of the differential diagnoses by primary care physician as soon as the possibility is considered. See, what happens that sometimes we get patients who are already treated, diagnosed much earlier, and they come to us, and once we tell them that you have got a cancer, he says, huh? Do I have cancer? I was never told. So it's not only the duty of the oncologist, it's the person who makes the diagnosis initially, who comes into first contact with the patient, that he should also give us, he may not say that you have got a stage 4 disease, but he says, I have got a suspicion that you have got such and such kind of a disease. Then the patient comes mentally prepared to us. Leaving the oncologist to convey the bad news after confirming diagnosis lead to severe emotional distress. If the patient has been investigated for 1 month, has been kept in dark about the diagnosis or the possibility of a diagnosis, comes to the oncologist, and oncologist, like, a super god says, you've got a stage 4 lung cancer, you've got 6 months to live, the patient will definitely be emotionally very disturbed. So, truth telling is a process, it's not a single event. So, we should build it upon slowly and gradually. And the primary care physicians have better knowledge of the patient and their families. They will understand better that whom to communicate, whom to tell. See, what happens that once the patient comes to a tertiary care center, it's very, very difficult for us. Because if a stage 4 patient comes to us, if we do not communicate with the patient, tomorrow he will say, why didn't you tell me? And most of the time, the patient relation will come to us and say that, don't tell the patient. Though he may be highly educated, if you tell the patient, he will be half dead. So in the present day scenario, where most of the people have got access to internet, where most of the people are educated, they read about their disease, they know about the diagnosis, we should not keep the patient in dark. How should you communicate this? Don't communicate with a distant. Don't communicate that the patient has come in a hopeless situation. You may tell that to the patient relations. So some hope, opportunity that the treatment can be given, and tell that you have got, these are the choices you have got. Maybe you can choose whatever best suits you. Method of breaking bad news can be non-disclosure, maybe by your signs and symptoms, full disclosure, or individually. It means you can talk to the patient individually. And breaking the bad news, the best way is to individualize disclosure is the best. If you can talk to the patient individually, that will be the best thing to do. How to communicate? See, in a busy practice, the doctors sometimes, because of lots of patient load, they are a little hostile. There is no time. But ideally speaking, it should make the person very comfortable, cozy. You should see the patient is comfortably seated and then tell them anything bad that you want to tell them. So this is Spikes, the 6-step protocol. I think somebody will be covering on it. I will not talk much, but it should be the right setting. The patient perceptive English should be taken into consideration. And invitation to impart information, provide knowledge and education, respond to the patient's emotions. You should not be drudged face. You should have emotions on your face, and provide summary along with strategy. So I'll not go into much of details of these things. I'll just skip them because somebody else is talking about these things. And avoid using jargons. Use very simple terms. So the doctor should not say that it is simple. You have got a carcinoma. So you should tell in very simple terms that you know you have got a lung cancer or something like sarcoma. And there's no harm in repeating the message. So if you can see here, this is a notice on a public bar. Our public bar is presently not open because it is closed. So they have repeated the message, so there is no harm repeating the message to the patient once you have given the communication. Stepwise approaches. Step 1, document in the notes and letter, inform the patient and family doctor. Does the patient know? What does the patient know, and what is the understanding of the disease? What more information is wanted? Would you like me to give more information, more details about your illness? Give a warning shot. I am afraid it looks more serious than we have hoped. So you are not giving one shot. एक घूसा नहीं मार रहे कि एकदम बिल्कुल तुम हो गए हो खत्म. So you can just say that I have a bad news for you. You have got certain disease like this. Allow the patient to refuse information at this point because the patient may not be receptive. He may not take all the information. It must be very hard to accept. Explain in narrative events if somebody wants to be told. Elicit and listen to the concern, what the patient is worried about. Encourage ventilation of feelings. Sometimes the patient may weep. So you should allow them to vent out their feelings at that point of time. Summarize the plan, concerns, and the moment seem to be. Offer availability for your support. You should not say that, I have made the diagnosis, I have prescribed you this thing, my job is done. You go back to your physician and take the treatment there. What the people are more afraid of is that your doctor should not disown you towards the end of life. It's very, very important. You should offer availability and support throughout the ailment. Maybe through your hospice care or supportive care or pain relief, but you should be available to the patient. And there should be a team which should be able to communicate with the patient. And it should not be that you are abandoning once the things are done. Communication is not only talking, it is language, it's paralanguage, and it's non-verbal communication. Patting a patient, shaking hands with the patient, sometimes the patient may become very hostile when you have put something, especially a lady patient who comes with breast cancer. You just put your hand on the back, she might feel embarrassed. So you have to judge those things. They are known as non-verbal communications. Some patient may be very, very emotional and she would like to hug you also. So that's entirely, so you have to judge those emotions when you are doing the communication. And again, bedside mannerism, which has been there since a long time, is one of the best things to cool and comfort the patient that you are there with the patient always. What happens that usually in our society that doctors prefer to use the term cancer because they say it might have negative connotations. And you are seeing lots of movies. Movies में दिखता है कैसे मतलब communication होता है, so that also is a negative feeling. And usually what happens, the family also reinforces, आपने बोल दिया कि तो गड़बड़ है तो गड़बड़ हो जाएगा फिर. So they say that so sometimes we deceive the patient that जी आपके blood में infection है. Blood cancer है तो blood cancer नहीं बोलेंगे. We'll tell them that you have got some infection in the blood and your counts are high. But ideally speaking, you should make an attempt to give the correct diagnosis to the patient at the earliest as possible. Those jargons will be there. Family will never like. The patient himself might be knowing fully well that he has got such and such disease. But the patient's family doesn't want. Another important thing is that we should give a realistic picture. Doctors tend to be over-optimistic in assessing prognosis. They are not predicting the outcome accurately. Some people give optimistic picture, some people will give very pessimistic picture. And important thing is that once a patient is very ill, we should not be afraid of referring them to a terminal care or a hospice care or to a terminal care center. And by doing this, we may also subject patient not being put to unnecessary treatment. Tell the patient most information first. Stress on the key points. Repeat important information. And maybe at the end of your communicating with the patient, you can have some backup material and you can give to the patient so they can read and know more about this disease. What to tell the patient, especially in malignancies? Focus on positive. So that's what I was telling, that shed away the negative attitude. Focus on the positive. High cure rates are possible. If the patient is very much worried about the cost of treatment, tell them the cheaper treatment options are available. Help is available through Prime Minister's Relief Fund, Chief Minister's Relief Fund. So many agencies are there to help. Unlike other diseases, if early cancer is a one-time treatment, we should also tell them that we can minimize the side effect and motivate the patient for completing the treatment and not leaving the treatment halfway. So this is just an example of testicular tumor, where at the cost of some toxicity, see this, you are seeing the upper curve, the high dose curve, and near is the low dose curve. With high dose curve, you are able to give a chances of cure in more than about 90% of the cases. So it's very, very important what type of malignancy you are dealing, how you are treating the patient. So dose is very, very important in certain malignancies. So you should be careful in treating these patients, especially curable malignancies. Just giving an example, this is an old slide, but stage 1 breast cancer is curable in 90% of the cases, 90 to 95% of the cases. 5%, 10% cases it may not be curable. Even stage 4 breast cancer can have a 5-year survival of around 18 to 20%. So you have to choose the patients well, you have to communicate with them well, and you have to prognosticate them well. So that can only be done with good communication. This is just giving you an example of chronic myeloid leukemia. I don't know how many of you are in the era of 20 years or old in the profession. We used to see people with massive spleens crossing the midline in 1990s. Now, I hardly see any patient of CML come with massive splenomegaly because there are effective treatments available. Earlier, before 1991 or 2000, the patient with chronic myeloid leukemia used to survive for about 2 to 3 years or maximum 4 years. They used to have chronic disease, go into aggravated phase and go into blast crisis, and within 4 to 5 years they used to die. But now, the people of chronic myeloid leukemia with successful therapy are living 10 years and beyond. So that's the advances that the medical science has made. Sorry for this slide is not being projected very well. But the first is, in childhood malignancies, we find that all malignancies are curable to the tune of about 75 to 80%. And if you see that disease like Hodgkin's disease, neuroblastoma, they are really, there have been incremental increase in cure for all hematological and non-hematological malignancies for the pediatric age group. This is all hematological malignancies. The second bar is ALL. The third is AML. AML is the only one that is slightly low. Then comes the NHL and Hodgkin's disease. They are the solid tumors, that is the brain tumors, then the Wilms tumor, which is highly curable, neuroblastoma, and bone tumors. All these malignancies in childhood are curable to the tune of about 75% today. The same was not a picture about 30 years ago. So, if you see the statistics, the cancer deaths are dropping, both in males and females. The survivors are increasing. And if you see the 5-year survival rates, in 1975-77 they used to be 50%, they are in 2005 68%, and they are still going up. What will my patient need for treatment? Money, If you do not have money, there are resources from government or NGOs that are available. There are lots of NGOs that visit the government hospitals. They can get the treatment help from there. Accommodation, again, various big hospitals have the dharamshalas. They have things there, or the NGOs, agencies are there to help you. Blood and platelet support can be obtained from the blood donors. And what you really need is a dedicated, educated, honest, hard-working companion, may or may not be a family member. See, if you see the cost of drugs, that can be very much variable. The generic drugs are much cheaper than the imported drugs. And if you see the option in the morning, you must have been seeing the presentation by Dr. Lalit Kumar. Because treatment of multiple myeloma only varies from 3,600, 6,000 rupees to 9 lakhs, depending upon the type of treatment that you are taking. So all types of treatment are available for the patient. Then the government help from the PM Relief Fund, the State Relief Fund, the NGOs, AmeriCares, Indian Cancer Society, WeCare, then we have Cancer Sahyog, CPCA, the pharma companies like Novartis, Pfizer, Reddy's, lots of pharma companies are coming to help out the patient. They have SPARSH program, they have GPAP program, and lots of programs are available through the pharmaceutical industry. And this is very, very important, that whenever there's a patient in the family or the near or the dear ones, I think my advice would be that the first treatment is the best treatment. Please send the patient to a place where there's a comprehensive care, where they can be handled positively. The first treatment is the best chance for cure. Cure and survival is best when the right oncologist goes and sees the right center. That's very, very important. And if you see that the optimal treatment is very, very important. The survival or cure is better when the patient is treated by a trained surgical oncologist, a trained medical oncologist, a trained hemato-oncologist, than when treated by gynecologist, internist, or a general pediatrician. Suboptimal treatment by 15%. This statement is very, very important, please. Suboptimal treatment by 15% will reduce the response rate by 50%. So if you are reducing the dose, it is really going to compromise with your cure rates. This is just showing, this is a very, very old study, CA breast study. We have people surviving for 30 years on these kind of drugs. And if you see, the drug dose is very, very important. The people who have received right kind of the dose, they have survived for a longer duration of time. At the end of the therapy, the patient and the family are related and relieved. Explain them the precautions will be required, vaccination and medication what are required, follow-up schedule with the general physician, with the oncologist, and follow-up investigations. So many patients who receive systemic treatment are impaired abilities. They have impaired defense mechanism. They may not be able to work very well. They may not be able to concentrate very well. They may have less effort tolerance, and they are prone to second malignancies. So counseling should be done for genetic predisposition, and they can be due to chemotherapy also. And long-term side effects of drugs like heart failure and blood cancer should also be told to the patient. Follow-up schedule depends upon the type of cancer, the stage of the disease. Natural history and type of cancer is very important. Usually 3 months to 1 year, 6 monthly for 3 years, and yearly thereafter. And it may vary from patient to patient. Investigation and follow-up will vary from patient to patient. If it's a patient of breast cancer, their follow-up is different. If it's a patient of acute lymphatic leukemia, their follow-up is going to be distant. And if it's a patient of ovarian cancer, their follow-up is going to be different. So outcomes, we all wish well to our patients. And this is just to show you that the most rewarding thing to an oncologist is a patient who survives the disease and has a happy family, happy and married life. So this is a patient of acute myeloid leukemia, cured of the disease, got married, and bore a child and having a good family life. Same way, there is a second patient who is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, many years down the line, got married, settled in life, and having a fruitful family life also. So these are some websites where you can get this information about communication and talking to the patient. So concludingly, I would say that communication skills are essential for good patient-doctor relationship. It leads to better satisfaction and compliance, and skills can be taught and learned. I think there will be a lecture on breaking the bad news, and this will remember the term spikes. Do not leave the job of breaking the bad news to the oncologist. You can also play a part. Maybe even if a sister knows that the biopsy report has come this, but the patient definitely showed to a sister that, and you read that it's a CA breast. So you don't tell, you can just tell them that there's something wrong with your breast, or some idea to the patient is always better. Because once they come to the oncologist, we straight away says you've got stage 4 breast cancer, that is, disheartening the patient. And very importantly, focus on the positives. With that, I'll conclude my talk. Thank you so much.